Detailed summary. New characters: Oedipus, the king of Thebes, who is married to Jocasta, his mother. Priest, a priest of Zeus, the king of the gods. Creon, the brother of Jocasta, the mother of Oedipus. Chorus, a group of Theban elders and their leader, whose commentary helps the audience understand the events on stage. Tiresias, the blind prophet who sees the future. Detailed summary. The play opens during the plague years in Thebes. Miserable and dying, the people don't know what to do about their condition. Nothing, not even prayers to the god is helping. Oedipus is a great and kind king, and he feels the pain of his people. Approaching the faithful but despairing worshippers at his altar, he asks what he can do. A priest of Zeus, the king of all the gods, details his despair of the people. Death is everywhere. Crops, livestock, people, all are being stricken. Despite the devastation, the priest still has faith in the gods and in his king, and having made offering at the altar, he now begs Oedipus to do something. The king says that he has already done something. He has sent his brother-in-law Chiron to the oracle at Delphi for advice. The oracle's pronouncements were taken seriously by many powerful people, and it is a sign of humility and of respect for the gods that Oedipus sends for its advice. Chiron returns and Oedipus immediately asks for news. Chiron hints that it would best be delivered in private, but Oedipus insists on having Chiron tell his news publicly. The news seems simple enough at first. The oracle has said that the killer of the previous king Laius must be avenged. The complicated part is how to do this. The crime has gone unsolved for many years, and any clues the murderer left have long since disappeared. Oedipus mocks the people for having let such a crime go unsolved and unpunished. He vows to find the killer, serve justice, and stop the plague. In a long speech, the chorus mourns the dead and begs the gods for help. The leader of the chorus suggests that the blind prophet Tiresias might be able to help, and the ever vigilant Oedipus says a message has already been sent to him. This is an early foreshadowing of the interplay between sight and blindness that builds throughout the play. It is one of the play's central ironies that the blind old man is the first to see the truth. For all his strength, intelligence, and wisdom, Oedipus is blind to the central and most tragic facts of his life, that he is the man who killed his father and that he has taken his mother as his wife. Although he has constructed his life to avoid the fate that was foretold for him, he has failed to see that all his efforts have only led him closer to fulfilling that grim prophecy. Oedipus welcomes the prophet with praise for his powers and his knowledge, but the seer is strangely reticent. He wishes only to go back home without speaking. Oedipus insists on hearing what Tiresias has to say. Tiresias says that Oedipus is the cause of the plague, that the king is the killer. In a rage, Oedipus rejects Tiresias and his vision and accuses the seer of conspiring with Creon against the throne. The leader of the chorus tries to smooth over the situation, but it's too late. Tiresias answers Oedipus furiously, saying that the king can see far less than a blind man can. This section ends with mutual threats and insults. New characters: Jocasta, the queen of Thebes who is married to her son Oedipus, a messenger from Corinth. Detailed summary. This section begins with a long song from the chorus, whose faith in the power of prophecy and in Oedipus, their king, is being surely tested. One thing is certain, that someone who committed the terrible crime of murdering lies is loose in the city, and fate lies in wait to punish him. The chorus says, but the prophet Tiresias, who has always been reliable, is now making terrible accusations against a king who has been brave, just, and wise. Deciding to put off any decision, the chorus demands proof before accepting the charges Tiresias has made. The gods who know the truth could supply the truth the chorus seeks, but Zeus and Apollo are keeping what they know to themselves. While the chorus waits for the gods to speak, the members hope that Oedipus turns out to be innocent. Chiron enters, then proclaiming his innocence, angry and feeling wronged. He wants to confront his brother in law over the charges of conspiracy and treason that Oedipus has publicly hurled at him and Tiresias. The leader of the chorus advises calm, saying Chiron should consider overlooking the incident, but that is not going to happen because Oedipus enters and repeats the charge. The two men interrogate each other, trying to prove guilt and innocence. And Creon cleverly argues that he does not want the throne, being the king's brother in law gives Creon all the prestige and wealth of the ruler with none of his responsibilities. Creon says the leader of the chorus hears reason in what Creon says and suggests that Oedipus is being hasty in condemning his relative. Oedipus rejects this advice, saying he wants Creon dead. Jocasta is Creon's sister and the wife of Oedipus, and she breaks up the fight between them by shaming them into silence. She gets from each man a brief version of his side of the story, and then she asks Oedipus to believe her brother's Daniel and to spare his life. The chorus sides with Jocasta and Chiron and says that Oedipus would do well not to execute a kinsman on a whim. Oedipus yields, but without grace, Chiron leaves, muttering prophetically that Oedipus is the type of man who goes too far. Oedipus and Jocasta quarrel over Chiron, and the chorus interrupts them, saying there is trouble enough in Thebes without the royal couple fighting and making things worse. The chorus gives Oedipus and Jocasta some privacy, and the queen asks the king why he is so upset. Oedipus says that Chiron has schemed with Tiresias to pin the murder of Laius on him. Trying to calm her husband, Jocasta says that she and Laius long ago outwitted the gods and their prophets, and that he need not fear them either. Proclaiming victory over everything scared, Jocasta tells Oedipus how she and her first husband Laius cheated fate. Everything turned out fine, Jocasta says, and there's nothing to worry about now. Jocasta tells Oedipus not to jump to conclusions, and they agree to send for the old freed slave, who is the murder's sole surviving witness. Oedipus then delivers a long, soul searching speech. He still believes himself to be the son of the Corinthian king Polybus, but he is bothered by a dim memory of a drunken reveler. He continues his history with the story of his visit to the oracle at Delphi, where he heard for himself the prophecy that he would kill his father and wed his mother, a loving son to the only parents he has ever known. Oedipus fled and never returned. Wandering, Oedipus soon meets and kills an old man and the escorts accompanying him. Oedipus remembers. By nearly running Oedipus off the road and then striking him, the old man asked for a fight, but what the old man got was death and the fulfillment of the prophecy that he would be killed by his son. Oedipus is just beginning to figure out who the old man was. Telling the story, Oedipus feels his memories connect now with the present, and he sees for the first time that he killed the stranger at the same crossroads where Lais was killed. Oedipus prays to the gods that someone can somehow clear him of the crime he now suspects he committed. Jocasta herself soon has second thoughts about mocking the gods and she prays to Apollo. Oedipus is innocent and Jocasta says she feels helpless. A messenger from Corinth appears. He announces that Polybus, the king of Corinth, is dead and that the people want Oedipus to be their king. Hearing this, Oedipus believes that he is now free of a least part of the prophecy. If death has claimed his father Polybus, then Oedipus cannot possibly commit patricide. Worried about the part of the prophecy that says he will marry his mother, Oedipus says he must stay away from Corinth as long as she is alive and well there. Attempting to comfort Oedipus, the messenger from Corinth speaks and winds up revealing shattering details of the truth. King Polybus raised Oedipus as his own son, the messenger says, and Queen Merope loved the child as well as any natural mother, but they were only foster parents. Oedipus is free to go back to Corinth anytime he likes without fear of illicit relations with his mother, because Merope is no blood relation of his, the messenger says. Instead of bringing relief to Oedipus, this news increases his distress. He presses the messenger for details, and the messenger says that the child raised by Polybus and Merope was a foundling rescued from a hillside where he was abandoned. The starvation, his ankles bound together. A shepherd found the child and delivered it to the messenger, who turned it over to the childless royal couple at the palace. Oedipus asks for a description of the shepherd, and the messenger says he remembers only that the man was a servant of Lais. Determined to know the whole story, Oedipus asks if anyone in the chorus knows this shepherd. The leader of the chorus says that's up to Jocasta to say. Jocasta is beginning to suspect the truth that the baby she abandoned not only killed Lais but is now her husband. She begs Oedipus to call off this quest. Jocasta asks Oedipus to drop the idea of locating the shepherd who saved him, but he won't hear of it. As deaf to her pleas as he is blind to the truth about himself. He vows to discover his origins, leaving the stage with a cry of anguished grief. Jocasta worries the leader of the chorus, who suggests to Oedipus that the queen's sorrow could lead to something awful. He is right, as the play's earliest audience knew, but Oedipus brushes off the leader's concerns. Trouble appears quickly enough in the person of the shepherd. Threats of torture and death from Oedipus, who is bound and determined to know what the shepherd so desperately wishes not to tell. This secret is revealed very quickly once the shepherd decides that there's no point in trying to squash the truth any longer. The baby that Jocasta and Lais abandoned was the same baby who was raised at Corinth and who came home to Thebes to kill Lais and marry the dead king's bride. Oedipus quickly realizes the horror of what he has been told, and he rushes off stage to nurse his sorrow. The chorus reacts by first singing of the glorious achievements Oedipus won for himself in the world, an ancient Athenian example of the best and brightest of men. He was mighty, he was clever, and he was just. A messenger from the palace comes outstage to announce that Jocasta has taken her own life. How she tore her hair from her head on her way to the royal bedroom, how she bolted the doors shut behind her, and how she wailed with grief and sorrow. Oedipus is also beside himself with misery, and the messenger describes how the king followed Jocasta to the bedroom and broke down the doors. Inside the chamber, Oedipus discovered his wife and mother suspended with her head in a noose, swinging back and forth, dead. The messenger tells the chorus that after Oedipus gently toward Jocasta's body and laid it on, the king pulled pins from her clothes and blinded himself. Oedipus rages that he has long been metaphorically blind and now he chooses to be physically blind. The chorus answers that it is better to die than to be alive and blind. But Oedipus insists that his self mutilation was the right thing to do. At least now he will not have to see his father's eyes when they meet in death. He says he also can't bear to look at his children. Cheiron comes out stage, flanked by guards, and he orders the men to bring Oedipus deep inside the palace to spare the ruined man from becoming a public spectacle. Oedipus begs Cheiron for banishment, requests a decent burial for Jocasta, and asks that his daughters be looked after. His sons will manage, he says. They are men, and they can always make a living with their hands if need be. But the girls were princes, reared for marriage to royal men. No hope of finding husbands now. Cheiron grants all these requests and brings the girls to Oedipus for farewell embraces. Oedipus apologizes to them for the horrors they must now live with and begs them to somehow find a way to transcend the awful circumstances of their lives. The play ends with the chorus saying, if this can happen to Oedipus, the man who solved the riddle of the Sphinx and who became a mighty king, it can happen to anyone.